Good morning and welcome once again to Safari Live on this, the 3rd day of January 2018. My name is Steve Falconbridge and I'm joined with... I apologize. I'm joined with Senzo behind the camera. He's out with me this morning and we're coming out here to enjoy the wonderful bush in the Sabi sand, South Africa. The temperature is 18 degrees Celsius, 64 degrees Fahrenheit, and it is partly cloudy, but it is looking like it's going to clear up. And what a beautiful morning we have in store for you this morning, folks. We've briefly just stopped on the side of the road because I know the first thing I generally need in the morning is a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and here we have a lovely plant. If you can just look to the left of our Sens, it is probably one of the most common plants that we have at the moment. It's not the best light, folks, I do agree, and I do apologize, but it is quite a common plant and quite easily recognizable. We have what we call the red bush willow. And the red bush willow is quite nice because what you can do with the red bush willow is you can clip off a couple of these leaves and you can put them into some hot water and you can make yourself a lovely tea. So for those of you waking up or for those of you getting ready for bed, please join us this morning on a wonderful safari. We're hoping to come out this morning and find you some wonderful birds. They are already calling. We can hear the kingfishers, we can hear the bush shrikes, we can hear the tropical boo-boo calling. There's a number of lovely bird sounds this morning. The birds are invigorated by the rain yesterday and conditions are fantastic. We have Tristan out with us who will be joining us shortly, and later on we'll be crossing to the Mara, so please feel free to send some questions through the hashtag Safari Live and follow the stream on YouTube, and let's see what we can find. I'm quite interested to see if we can pick up on tracks of lions or even leopards this morning, and let's see how we go. Bush willow, put it in your tea, fantastic stuff. Off we go, folks. Okay, Sens. What a lovely day we have. I hope those of you who are waking up and just joining us had a wonderful night's sleep. And those of you who are still awake, I hope you are bearing with us for a little while longer while we can show you the bush. I know it's getting late for some of you out there, but please bear with us, stay with us, don't go anywhere. You never know what you will miss. And on that note, we're going to cross to Tristan with an update for him this morning. Have a fantastic morning, folks.
Right, so good morning everybody and welcome to our Djuma Game Reserve Safari this morning. Sorry about that, we have a few gremlins with the radios and so I didn't even hear Louise, but it is a very warm welcome. At least it seems as though we are going to get a separation of cloud, which will hopefully mean that the sun will come out and everything will get slightly warmer than what it is. Now, as Steve mentioned, my name is Tristan. On camera today I've got VM the Wildebeest, which is nice to have VM back on the back of the vehicle. It's been a while since I've driven with VM, so it's always good. And we are out and about in search of a Tingana at the moment, or what we think is Tingana. We found some tracks for a male leopard heading west into this area. We've lost the tracks very briefly now, so we're going to try and just go back and see if we can try and find those. So that's the sort of plan for the morning, is just to follow these tracks, and if failing all of this, we'll try and see if we can maybe go and find Thandi and the little fur ball that is her cub. Right, that's where we're going to head. Let's see if we're going to get lucky. Now, I wonder if maybe if it is Tingana, it's obviously it could potentially be that other male leopard if we're right on the western side of Djuma at the moment. And the reason why I say it could be Tingana is that last night VM and Steve bumped into Tingana on their way home, so they saw him coming into Vuyatela, and where the tracks are would be roughly where he would have maybe ended up. It's just the direction he's taken is one that he hasn't taken in quite some time. He hasn't been really moving to the west that much, and so he's been kind of going north and central areas of Djuma and then back east again. He hasn't pushed too much into Arathusa, so it's interesting. If this is him, it means his tracks are coming into an area where I haven't seen him walk probably in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 months. That's not to say that he hasn't been here. Obviously this leopard can move around a lot more than what we even know, and he'll sometimes get into a situation where, you know, they go into places and we don't see them for 3-4 days, and then they pop out, you know, in somewhere else, and we think that they haven't been there, and meanwhile they have. So it'll be interesting. I just know that male leopard, that unknown male that's now called the Hukumuri male, he's been around these areas quite a bit recently, and we've seen him, all the times we've seen him has been on this far western sort of side of Djuma. So interesting to me that it potentially means that, you know, he's been moving around a lot. Maybe that's what's going to attract Tingana around here and just try and sort of stamp his authority again. We had a bit of rain yesterday, and so I suppose it is a scent marking patrol that needs to happen now in order to just try and reaffirm that this is indeed Tingana's space. Now, the tracks that we last had came from that side and seemed to turn down this new road. I just want to double check. There's quite a few nice termite mounds along this road that would be great for a leopard just to curl up and sleep on, but I don't know if Tingana would be in the conditions that we've got. It's much like yesterday morning in that it's overcast, there's a bit of a wind blowing, so it's pretty good hunting conditions. So I would have thought last night that he would have been out and hunting and moving around trying to find some food, because VM tells me that he was a little on the skinnier side. It's not that he's skinny, but he could have done with a meal. We know Tingana likes to be well fed at all times. So VM has found tracks. Well done, Billy. So VM says he can see the tracks on the left hand side. It's very difficult to show these tracks because they, on the surface, and especially with the sort of lack of light that we've got at the moment, it's quite tough to actually even see them. I can't even see them my side. VM, you still see them there? Yeah. Do you think we can get them on camera or not?
But now there's 2 pairs next to each other.
Okay, so let's have a look here quickly, because VM says he's got 2 pairs next to each other. So let's have a look if we can see what these tracks are. Marisha, you're saying you were hearing a leopard sawing on the dam cam for the last 6 or 7 hours on and off. Well, I would imagine it was Tingana. I did hear him last night. I must be honest, I heard nothing this morning, but last night I did hear him, and so it would make sense if you have been hearing him calling periodically through the night. I would imagine maybe Thandi might have even responded, and you never know. Maybe this other male has also been around and also vocalizing. Now, I'm going to try and see if an attempt to try and show you guys these tracks. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but we are going to attempt to do this and to see if we can show you why we are in this area. And is talking about, now I brought my phone with because the phone might be able to add a bit of light just to show you the tracks that we're talking about. Now it's a bit close, and also I don't even think we're going to be able to bring these out for him. These are very, very, very faint. So I'm going to try and find something better somewhere down the road where we're able to actually see what these tracks look like, because even with the phone it's just literal smudges and ridges on the road itself. So it does look like a male leopard. I can't see if it's 2 males or just 1, but we'll have a little look around and double check quickly and have a proper sort of examination of what's going on. But I see what you're saying, VM. There's multiple sets of tracks here. Now I wonder if maybe this isn't the Styx cubs that have walked around here as well. I need to have a really good look, but while I do that, let's go back across to Steve and see where he is and whether or not he's had any luck or little tracks to start following.
Welcome back, and as we watch the sky begin to change colour, you can hear the Natal spurfowl, crested francolin in the background. The dawn chorus, folks. Indeed, it is dawn here in South Africa. It's just after 5 o'clock in the morning, and the bush is coming alive. Beautiful amber as the sky starts to change, the unstoppable force of the sun rising. Creation of all life. Here we are on the Sabi Sands once again. I believe Tristan has shown you some leopard tracks there, which is quite wonderful. I haven't noticed any tracks as of yet. We did pass some hippo tracks, but nothing too exciting so far. But we're going to continue on. Definitely sounds like a birding morning to me. There's lots and lots of wonderful sounds out there in the bush, and yes, I do enjoy my birds. We heard a Jacobin cuckoo calling just now. It'd be nice to get one of those on film. You can hear in the distance the grey-headed bushshrike. Wonderful, wonderful sounds in the morning. So folks, we're going to continue on along the road here. Maybe start heading on our way down towards Chitwa. See if we can pick up on the tracks of where those cubs of the Styx possibly went to. And we'll get back to you with an update shortly. But let's carry on. Come join us. Interactive game drive experience. Please feel free to send your comments and questions through at that hashtag. Love to see what you have to say this morning. Those of you at home snuggled in your beds, It's nice and fresh this morning. Guy, does the bush willow leaves contain any tannin? They do definitely contain tannin, and it's quite obvious in the fact that these leaves have no thorns. Now the red bush willow tree itself, they occur quite high up on the landscape. You don't find them generally down in the valleys, but it's not really a lot of so the chemicals are mainly for insect defense and herbivory. We saw something. Sorry, Senzo spotted one of those pigs. Where is he? Okay. Oh, looks like not everybody's awake yet this morning. That is fantastic eyes, Senzo. So I got a bit of a fright there. Senzo and I have started working together for the first time, and his body language made it seem as if I was doing something wrong, but no, he spotted what looks like a big male warthog. You can see that by the fact that there's 2 pairs of warts on the face. Ah, look at those tusks, or as people refer to them as tushes. They are modified in sizes. Tushes, and off he goes. I don't know if you noticed, folks, but he came out of a termite mound there, and he was in backwards. Wonderful, wonderful termite mound. They reckon termite mounds are home to up to 27, 28 species of mammal, and majority of the holes dug into those termite mounds are actually created by that elusive and very secretive nocturnal animal, the aardvark. And the aardvark with very, very strong claws. For those of you who haven't seen an aardvark before, please let me quickly show you a photo, because these animals, which I think I've only seen a handful in my life, an aardvark, also known as an ant bear to those of you who are not from South Africa. Here we have a wonderful picture there. And there you can see the tracks on the right. There's quite a characteristic track if you ever do come across it. The beautiful ant bear or aardvark feed primarily on termites, and so they dig millions of holes or hundreds of holes in search of termites, and obviously they're digging it into the termite mound themselves, and that provides a habitat and a niche for a number of species. There's even bird species such as the little bee eater that will actually nest in the cavities of these holes, and lots of species as well as the rock python, mongooses, both slender, dwarf and banded mongooses. Obviously we've seen the aardvark, and then hyenas will quite often make their dens in these wonderful sites. So as we call an aardvark, known as an ecosystem engineer, they have the potential to change the landscape that they live in, and the digging and the artificial creation. It's almost like a builder and an engineer. They can change and dig and change everything that they do in the environment, and without them a lot of species would not survive. So even though we don't see aardvarks all the time or very often, they are instrumental to the survival of a number of your species out here. Let's carry on, Senzo. Fantastic eyes. You folks, you can be confident in the fact that we are not going to miss anything this morning with eagle eyes like that. I'm very impressed. And there was a question about the leaves, and there are tannins and chemicals in the leaves, most certainly. And we have a miracle of nature, Sens. Can you see it? Let me go forward. And so those alkaloids or chemicals are what will give you the taste and the flavor in the tea, but they are not poisonous, and they are fine for us to drink. Obviously if you drink too much of it at one go, it might affect your tummy, but we're just positioning for the miracle of nature, folks. Now if you'll bear with me, we'll just listen for a moment. Listen to the bush come alive. You can clearly hear the black-headed oriole. Unstoppable, the progress of the sun. Golden orb which dominates or determines all life on this planet. I have a picture here for you of the black-headed oriole, which we can hear calling loudly and proudly, but I know we're all much more interested in the sun. You can hear the long chirring sound of the crested barbet. All the birds re-establishing their territories, calling out their mates that might have been lost last night to a predator, telling all those of the same species to stay away. I am still alive. The genet did not get me last night. So what we hear is beautiful bird song is in fact warnings and death threats to birds of the same species, indicating that their territory is not vacant. Beautiful, Sands, beautiful. Look at that landscape. And you have a picture here for you, Sens, on the dashboard of that black-headed oriole that we can hear calling quite voraciously. Beautiful black head and that red beak make it quite easily distinguished from a lot of the weavers. Some of the weavers have got a black head, but they don't have a very long, straight red beak. And the plant that it's sitting on in that picture is in fact an aloe, and the orioles do feed on a lot of nectar. A whole lot of nectar, but they're also frugivores as well as insectivores. And they build very nice little cup-shaped nests which they camouflage in the fork of a tree using lichen. Wonderful. Okay, and in front of us then, I don't know if you can see those beautiful animals. So folks, I've just been spoken to briefly in my ear. I would like to send you back to Tristan, who might have a little fluffy surprise for you. Please enjoy.
Well, we do have a surprise. There's a beautiful sunrise, but as we were following our tracks, one turned into many, and there lying in the road is what I think is the Styx Pride. I'm not 100% sure. There's 3 adult females and a couple little cubs curled up. There's some that are in the bush as well, but majority of them on the road. It looks like it could potentially be the Styx Pride. There was rumors of the Nkuhumas somewhere on Simambili, so I wasn't 100% sure who was where. So I just want to have a little proper look, but it does look like the Styx, just given that there is a few little mange scars, and these cubs are about the right size. In the Nkuhuma Pride, their sub-adults are a lot bigger than that, so I would imagine that it is them. So interesting, because at first we thought we were on Tingana's track, but because they're so obscured and so sort of washed away, it didn't really look different to, well, one of these sub-adults didn't really look different to a leopard, so we kind of followed along. But as soon as VM said that there was more than one, and then we saw that there was probably 4 or 5 sets, I thought that this might be the case. I at first thought maybe it was just the Styx cubs that were walking around. I know that they've been left on their own for quite a bit, and they've been sort of having to deal with things by themselves, but as soon as you start to see cubs moving around as far as they have, then generally there should be at least one adult female around. Now, I know a lot of you have been very concerned about the fact that the cubs were left alone, and particularly the small little ones. There are some more underneath the tree just on the left hand side, so underneath there is a few more little heads. Whether or not this is, the small ones are here, I can't see just yet. They don't seem to be that visible at the moment, so maybe they're just lying in a pile together, warming up. The nice thing is that we're going to have a beautiful sunrise, which hopefully will stimulate these lions to at least somewhat wake up. But how beautiful is that? Lions on the road, this pink sky coming up over the eastern horizon, and so it's as good as it really gets. Now, I have not seen the Styx Pride in the year that I've been at Safari Live in this area once, so this is the first time that I've actually seen them this far west. It's not to say that they never used to come this side. When I was at Chitwa, the Styx Pride used to go all the way to Simambili, so they used to move around quite a bit, so it's not a surprise that they kind of come through here, but it's just interesting to see how the movements have changed over the course of a year. The Styx a year ago were spending 99% of their time to the south of us and to the sort of east, so they were around in Kruger, Cheetah Plains, those areas. Whereas now with the Nkuhuma Prides, seemingly not interested in Djuma at the moment. It's allowed the Styx to start moving. Although something about them just doesn't look like the Styx. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because they're all kind of huddled up and curled. It must be them, but it's just I haven't seen them in so long that it's also kind of takes a few moments to try and work out who's who. But it makes sense, like I say, 3 adult females, and then the size of the cubs and also the scarring and the mange scars that they've got would indicate that it is them. Still a very nice surprise to have. I didn't think that we would get them this morning. You always worry when you're tracking cats in this particular section because they tend to cross over into Arethusa quite quickly from where we are. I mean, Arethusa is probably no more than, I would say, 100 to 150 meters from where we are, and so you end up in a situation where you often think that you might not get lucky with them, but as you can see, everybody is very, very sleepy, so the chances of them moving right now is very, very slim. Except, of course, if that sun gets up and it starts to get really nice and warm, then we might find a situation where they do start to move. But it's good that the lionesses are at least with the cubs. I'm hoping, because Steve saw all 10 cubs together, that the 4 little ones are also here and have been cared for and have suckled and are hopefully all feeling a lot stronger than when they were just by themselves for a few days. And I know a lot of you get worried about when cubs get left, but that's very common for lions to do. They often do leave their cubs in these sort of small groupings together, and they'll go off and then hunt and try and then find food for those little ones, because they are all starting to get onto meat now. Even the small 4, they will be looking for meat as well and be trying and kind of get some sort of sustenance. So it's a tough job as a mother, and it's a lot of hours that they've got to spend hunting. Also now in summer, hunting becomes quite difficult for the lions. The animals themselves, most of them have fed incredibly well, and so they're fitter and stronger and faster. There's also a lot more bush for them to hide in, and at the end of the day, the lion's camouflage is not quite as good in the summer months as it would be in the winter. If you look at that green grass in the comparison to their coat, it's not as easy for them just to disappear as they would in the wintry grass, which is that perfect tawny color. So it's a little tougher to hunt in the winter months. They tend to have a little harder time than in the summer months. Oh, sorry, they have a harder time in the summer months than they do in the winter. But like I say, everybody seems very sleepy at this stage. I would imagine it's been a long night. They haven't walked as far as I would have thought either, given that they were seen just on the southern side of Djuma, close to Shabamu. Chitty Chatty Meg, you're wondering if an animal gets mange, will they always be a carrier of it? Well, Chitty Chatty Meg, so every animal out here has some mange on them. So even us as people, those mites can potentially be on you, and they just are manageable if your immune system is good and you are, you're clean and those kind of things. And the same with the animals. If they look after themselves and they're feeding very well, then generally they are okay, and the mange will be under control, and naturally the body will be able to fight them off and stop these outbreaks. But as soon as it gets dry and as soon as they become in a compromised state and they're not getting the nutrients that they need, that's when the mite starts to overpopulate and becomes really quite a handful, and you find that they then get it really badly, and they can then, obviously, as we know from the Styx Pride, can suffer from it very badly. But as time goes on, so they'll try and kind of get that population of mites on them under control, and once that happens and they get good nutrition and good rainfall, then generally you find that they are able to deal with the small little bit of mites that they have on them. But they generally all have some sort of mange mite on their fur at some point in their lives, whether or not they've been badly infected by it or not. It's just when the conditions are adverse are good for the mange mite itself, is when you see these massive explosions of it. But yes, there will be carriers of it. If you look at Tinyo, he still has mange on his tummy, even though his body looks really good. He still has a sort of population of mites that are on his tummy, which is where this all started, is that the Styx Pride, funny enough, didn't really have mange prior to the Birminghams arriving, and Tinyo was the one that had it a bit, and then it kind of just spread like wildfire because the conditions were perfect for the mite to grow. Now what I want to do is I just want to try and maybe just position slightly differently, because that sunrise in the background is really very, very pretty, and I just want to see if we can maybe get the lions with the sunrise. I just want to see also if there's any more around. Let's just have a look. If we go this side, I just want to make sure I'm not going to go over a bush here and a whole bunch of little cubs are going to come squirting out. But let's see. So I was hoping that we'd get the sun with the lions, which is pretty much what we've got now. Although there goes one lioness, she's off and into the bush. They definitely could do with a meal though. It seems as though they all are fairly hungry. That lioness, when she stood up, is very skinny, so they would definitely do with trying to find some sort of food item. When we were driving down Zoe's Road, I saw tracks for a number of zebra trotting up the road, so I wonder if they maybe didn't try hunt zebra last night. At the end of the day, that's what they've got to be going for at the moment. Wildebeest and zebra are going to be this sort of staple diet for these lions, because, well, we still haven't seen the proper return of buffalo to this northern part of the Sabi Sands. While there are herds that come in every now and then, we still haven't seen, stable amounts of buffalo bulls that are in this area, and we haven't seen too much in the way of actual sort of hunting opportunities for lion prides. And so they're relying a lot on things like zebra and wildebeest and kudu and those kind of things, and that's not massive meals for so many miles. When you've got a lot of miles like this, it makes life a little bit tougher, and so you'll find that they're probably trying to kind of survive on impala lambs and things, and it's not really going as far as it should. Cheetah Riker, you're wondering if cats can get too fat from eating too much. I've never seen it in the wild animals, and the reason why is because it's never that easy. So even in that drought period, while they were killing a lot more than they would be now, and they were making kills almost some of them were even 2-3 times a day, the problem with it was that those animals that they were killing weren't very rich in nutrients, and therefore, even though they were feeding a lot, they actually weren't gaining much out of it. So I've never seen cats get fat. When conditions are good and animals are really healthy and they've got a lot of fat, then it's really tough for the cats, because those animals are strong and they are healthy and they are able to get away from the cats a lot easier, and generally, like I say, vegetation is better, and so it becomes harder. But yeah, they don't get like house cats or domestic cats, and a lot of those cats, the reason why house cats get fat and often look like they are quite rotund is, one, because they do get overfed and they don't really have to work for their food, and two, because you have a situation where most of them are sterilized, and when you sterilize a cat, often that causes a body change. And if you go and look in zoos and in sanctuaries that keep lions that are on contraceptives or anything like that, they tend to be a lot fatter than the wild lions, and you find that their tails in particular, the base of their tails, get really big and fat, and so it's also to do with that. If you start to change their hormones and things like that, then they do put on weight. But out here, they have to work hard for their food, they have to walk a lot, they don't just kill everything that they hunt, and so even though they might feed well for 2-3 weeks and they'll look really round and big, then they'll go maybe a week without eating, and their body uses a lot of that nutrients very quickly. But how sweet is that, the two of them just lying together? You can see the one on the back has got a bit of a mangled ear, so I would imagine that maybe, just maybe, that mange has caused a bit of a problem on that ear itself, and you can see it's a little bit bald there, and then the other one has got quite a bit of damage to it. Right, well, we'll sit with the Styx Pride and see if maybe the sunshine will begin to wake them and they'll start to stir and hopefully take us on a walk around as they go and explore Djuma. And while we do that, I believe Steve has got something that the Styx Pride would love to be eating right now.
Welcome, and we're back with what looks like a male nyala, slowly but tentatively walking through the bush. He's being followed by another one and an impala. They're slowly walking through the bush in single file. Any of you who've been in the army or know anything about the army always know that we have what we call the point man. He's the one most danger. He walks right in the front, and everybody follows him behind. And the purpose of that is that the first one will obviously bump into whatever danger that you might get. Those of us who go for walks in the savannah, also we walk in single file with the rifle in the front. And here you can see he's slowly feeding as he walks, and nyala are mixed feeders, as we discussed yesterday. You can tell it's a male by those tall, strong, sharp horns on top of his head, and also quite easily identified against the kudu with that white mane of fur on the back. That white mane of fur looks very conspicuous and stands out, but he actually uses it in what we call their dance or their display, where he will pilo erect that, just like we do when we get, oh, here's a Valence cuckoo just flew over, folks. And if you got that call of his there, just flying over. Here we have the Nyala. You didn't hear it. I can play it for you in a moment while we're listening or watching the Nyala do his thing. We can also hear in the background the ominous call of the African black cuckoo. It's a morning for cuckoos, folks. And here, if you want to listen to this, I'll be playing it through my mic. Quite a loud, repetitive call, characteristic of the Valence cuckoo. And we play a few the cuckoo I can hear in the background, who's actually saying, "I'm so sad." If you have a listen to this. Quite an easily recognizable call as well. And the cuckoos, as we should all know, are brood parasites, and they've migrated here for the insects. Lots of insects. And as we watch the Nyala walking, I don't know if you can look just above him there. There's two birds, two black birds in the tree. Those are two fork-tailed drongos. And what's very interesting about these two fork-tailed drongos is they are practicing a behavior called commensalism, where they are watching the Nyala move through the long grass, and the Nyala disturb any insects that might be hidden or camouflaged in the long grass, and then they quickly swoop down, catching them and feeding on them. Above that Nyala as well sends in the bush. Can you see that oxpecker? Just straight behind him and up. In that little dead branch, you can hear the oxpecker a little bit right, up. There we go. Zoom in there. A little bit right. There we go. We have a red-bill oxpecker. He's just woken up, and he seems to be doing a very similar behavior to the fork-tailed drongo. He was also hawking. Now, hawking, if anybody's ever seen an individual holding a hawk in their hand and then they let it go to catch prey, that's why we call it hawking, because the bird sits on a perch, flies down and grabs any insects that might be coming or being disturbed by the Nyala. And it's quite interesting behavior, because fork-tailed drongos are renowned for it, and most people are quite aware that oxpeckers feed on ticks, which are located in the animal's fur, and there are records of oxpeckers feeding very similar to hawking. I've never actually seen this behavior practiced by an oxpecker. I normally always see them just hanging off the back of an animal, cleaning through that thick fur. Look at that beautiful red beak, easily characterized by or classified differently to the yellow-billed oxpecker, who has a red and yellow beak. I don't know if we find any yellow-bills here, but they were endangered for quite some time, but the Endangered Wildlife Trust has done some good work. They are coming back all through the Kruger Park. So you should always keep your eyes open. Never assume it is a red-billed. Have a look clearly at that beak and see that it's completely red. If the tip is yellow, you have a yellow-billed oxpecker. Doing what birds do in the morning, busy preening and cleaning. And we have the second Nyala bull slowly following his friend. And if you watch that gait, that way of walking, as the one foot rises, the other foot steps in its place. Very, very easily camouflaged in its walking approach. A question from Proud Cat Mama about how long the horns are. That's a very interesting question. It's not a topic I'm too familiar with, horn length. Most hunters out there are very, very familiar with length of horns. But I would say that's close to 60 centimeters, maybe 50 centimeters. What would that be for you folks in America? I am not 100% sure. Let me come back to you on that. But look at the tips of those horns, ivory tipped, showing that it's an adult, and those horns are designed for one purpose, not for defending themselves against predators, but for competing for the right to mate with their friend, or their adversary, should I say. Carrie, the first time you've noticed the tips. Yes, that's quite a nice classification or characteristic of an adult. You see it in kudu as well when they mature, and they get those ivory tips on the top of the horns, making it very sharp and a very dangerous weapon. But you see he's got his face in the bush there, and what bush is it, folks? The nyala is helping himself to his morning tea. He is feeding on what looks like, oh no, it is next to the red bush willow, but is not the red bush willow. Not quite sure. Look with my binoculars, but you'll notice that when these animals are feeding, they just feed. They don't seem to be spending too much time chewing. They fill their mouth, they chew once or twice, covering those leaves in saliva, and then basically filling their stomach. Nyala, like many of the antelope we have in the area, are classified as ruminants, which means they have a four-chambered stomach. And the adaptation that these animals have, or the benefits that they have of being a ruminant, is that they can come out now when there's a bit of light, when conditions are good and favorable and cool, and they can feed heavily, and they can fill that belly with a huge amount of vegetation. And then they can go and sit quietly in the shade and ruminate. And if you're not too sure what ruminating is, it's when they chew the cud. They regurgitate what they've already eaten, they macerate it up further with their very sharp, very grinding teeth, and those particles increase in surface area because the particle size decreases, which aids in bacterial or microbial breakdown in the stomach, and they're then absorbed into the lower stomachs and eventually through the digestive system. So it's a very good adaptation to eliminate predation, because ruminants, when they sit down in the shade ruminating, they are fully aware of what's going on around them, but their brain is on standby. So folks, we're going to stay here with these nyalas for a moment longer, but I'm going to send you back to Tristan, who's got an update for you. That's right. Please enjoy.
Well, not much has changed. Everybody's still very sleepy, and these two are about as cute as it gets. They've kind of got their heads together and using one another almost like a pillow, so they're fast asleep at the moment. I think it's been obviously a long couple days for these little ones, and I'm sure they were hoping that when moms arrived back that there would be food. But interestingly enough, just now we had a gust of wind that blew, and all of a sudden all the females and a lot of the cubs as well put up their heads and really started to sniff. You can see the one on the right is doing it now as the wind is just starting to get up again. There's obviously something in the air that they're picking up. I wonder if maybe there isn't buffalo around, or maybe there's a male lion somewhere here that we just haven't found yet, because they really became quite sort of interested, and they spent a long time just staring into that southern section, noses to the wind, and just trying to pick up what was going on. Could also be that they are hungry, and so when the wind blows, they're just trying to see if there's anything on the breeze that they could potentially start to feed off. But at this stage, it doesn't look like there's really too much around. I haven't seen or heard anything, and so they don't look as though they're too active either. So whatever it was, it means that they're not really that interested in it. If they'd picked up the scent of something that they really wanted to go investigate, we would have seen them marching off into that area. What you also see is that they've kind of gotten off the road, most of them, and they're now lying in the bush. I'm sure they're prepping for the day ahead. They know the sun is starting to rise, and it should potentially then start to get a little bit warmer, and so start to make their way into the thickets where they can at least find a bit of shade. I'm surprised though, it's not exactly warm now. I would have thought that it would have taken a while longer for them to start moving into sort of getting out of the way of the road. Maybe it's also just that the vehicles here that they've decided to start shifting a little bit, but one by one they kind of got up and went and lay on that side and have decided that the grass is maybe more comfortable than the road itself. But I haven't, like I say, heard any males this morning. Lions were very vocal last night. So just after our drive finished, there was lions calling and making quite a lot of noise during the evening, and so I think the males must have been somewhere around, but maybe they ditched these females and decided to carry on. The Birminghams at the moment seem to be on a serious sort of takeover mission of the southern sections or central sections of the Sabi Sand, should I say. They've been seen as far south as Nkombi, which is way, way, way down in the south of the reserve, and that's probably because they're following that Kambula Pride, which is their offspring from the Salala Pride, well, descendants from the Salala Pride, should I say. And they've kind of moved in that area, and they've ended up dominating around sort of Mala Mala, Londolozi, and so that's dragging the Birminghams further south. And with the Majingalans aging the way that they are, it's no surprise that the Birminghams are just expanding their territory further and further. The interesting thing's going to come, though, as to what's going to happen, because soon we're going to see a situation where the Birminghams are going to be much like the Majingalans and the Matimbas and the Mapokos before them, where their territory just gets so massive that they're going to either end up splitting up, and which could lead to their downfall, or they're going to end up abandoning some of the prides up in this section, which is exactly what the Majingalans did, is that they were kind of in control of this whole area, and they just relinquished it without really being pushed out, and went all the way down to the central and western sectors to the prides down there, and then ended up just staying there. So I wonder if we're going to see a similar pattern from the Birminghams. I'm hoping not, because the Birminghams, while they did bring about a mange outbreak in the form of, Styx and even the Nkuhumas, they have been really good for our lion prides in this area. We've had a positive growth of lions so far. A lot of the cubs have survived and made it to a fairly reasonable age, and I mean the Styx, these are still quite young, and if males did come in now, they would probably be a threat, but at least they're getting there and they're slowly growing. We know in the Nkuhuma Pride, those youngsters are developing nicely and are at the age now where they're probably about 6 months away from being okay if another male lion coalition came in. And so there's them. Then the Torchwoods have also got cubs. The Telematis, I think, have got cubs with the Birminghams. I'm not sure, it might not be, but at least the growth of lions here has been much better. It's been such a hard sort of last, I would say, 7-8 years for all of the lionesses around here. They've had to deal with a lot in terms of changing of coalitions, and they've really had a struggle to be able to keep their cubs alive. And so the Birminghams have been good for that reason, and I hope that they don't just leave now at this critical time and we end up with a situation where new males do start to arrive. The thing is, though, is that there really aren't any new males that are pushing in this area that we know of. We haven't seen any sign of young male lions coming into this area in the last little bit. So, Michael, you're saying because the Nkuhumas have spent very little time on Djuma over the last little bit, would the Styx now start to establish themselves on Djuma a lot more? Well, Michael, if you go back a few years, the Styx Pride were here a lot more than the Nkuhuma Pride. In fact, the Styx Pride used to be seen regularly on quarantine around Gowrie Dam and even further north than that. So the Styx Pride was the pride that was seen a lot more than the Nkuhumas. The Nkuhumas used to be much more up on this sort of Manuleti boundary with Buffels Hook, and very seldom used to come into Djuma. That all sort of shifted and changed when the Styx were pushed south, and the Styx movement south started to happen with the Matimbas and the Birmingham kind of takeover. When the Birminghams came in and the Matimbas started to move further south, so the Styx had cubs with the Matimbas, so they tended to hang around just to the south of that. Then I think you had a situation where the Nkuhumas kind of started to spend more time on Djuma, and being a bigger pride, that kept the Styx slightly more pegged to the southern areas. But now that the Nkuhumas have moved, so the Styx can start coming back into these areas and start moving around. But the sort of dynamics of lions within this area is absolutely fascinating. When I was here in 2012 and working with Chitwa, the Styx Pride was a very sort of big pride in one way, but they also a pride that moved a lot. They spent probably 50% of their time at least on Mala Mala, and then they would come up and come through and then on to Djuma and then back to Mala Mala again, and they even used to range as far as Simambili, like I used to say. But the pride that we actually saw the most during that period was the Silala breakaways, which is now the Mangen Pride. So those 4 females with the original tail is female, they used to be seen from Nkoro all the way to Elephant Plains and north into Djuma, south towards the Mala Mala boundary, and they just used to walk that corridor, and that was our most viewed lions for over a year. So they were the ones that were around. Now the Mangan Pride has completely left this area. They don't come up here at all. They now spend most of their time in Londolozi. The Saladas are down there, and so there's this kind of fluid movements that happen, and it's often linked to environmental factors as well as coalitions of males and who the females have mated with as to where they start to then spend a lot more time. So I think with the Birmingham's kind of being so dominant now over this whole section, it's allowing the Styx and the Angama Pride to move a lot more and to range a lot more than what they were right at the beginning when the Birminghams first arrived. When the Birminghams first arrived, they didn't have a huge section. You also had a lot of competition from other male lions to the south and to the east and these kind of things, and so it kept the Styx and the Angamas in quite a fixed area, and that meant that we didn't see the Styx coming into Djuma much at all. But now, because the Birminghams have taken over so much more and are expanding, it's allowing both prides to start venturing and to start exploring a lot more. Right. I don't think our lions are going to move just yet. We'll sit around a little bit longer and just see, maybe, with the sun up and a bit of a wind, it might get them going. But while we do that, let's go across to Steve, who has got a feathered friend that is not a friend of the lions.
Feathered indeed. Feathered indeed. We have here one of the largest birds you will find in the area. It is a whiteback vulture, and quite often the presence of whiteback vultures and other vultures are an indication of some form of predator or some form of carcass or dead animal on the ground. We have only one whiteback vulture here, and how I can tell you for sure it's a whiteback vulture and not a cape, because the cape vulture and whiteback vulture look very similar. If you can see that eye is dark, whereas the cape vulture's got a yellow eye. Very nice characteristic feature to see to determine the two. And you see that black patch under the throat. There you see it in screen now. That is what we call the crop. And you look at the vulture, if that crop seems to be bulging, it's indicating that that animal has eaten or has food in the crop. If it is empty, it means it is quite a hungry bird and has done not much. It is still quite early and the temperatures are still very cool. So it is quite commonplace to find vultures sitting in a tree like this. They rely on thermals, they rely on air currents to allow them to fly, to pick them up. Very efficient way of flying. So this bird will sit there and will wait. It'll spend the morning waiting until the heat allows it to a much easier flight. Because why waste energy when you can let the environment do it for you? Wonderful sighting. This is my first vulture that I've seen in the first few days I've been here in the Sabi Sands, and hopefully not the last. But quite nice to understand, folks, that if you find whiteback vultures, even if you find a whole lot of them in a tree, it doesn't mean that you have any meat on the ground. Okay, whiteback vultures are a very unreliable vulture for indicating meat. But if you find whiteback vultures with a tawny eagle or a hooded vulture or battalier, then you can almost be certain that the meat is close by, and generally underneath where the hooded vulture is sitting. Jake, the largest bird we get in the area, the largest raptor would be the martial eagle, and the largest vulture would be the lappet-faced vulture. Lappet-faced and cape vulture are quite similar in size, but the lappet-faced just seems so much bigger and behaves in so much more of an aggressive manner than the cape vulture. But if you can look at that beak, you go right up on that beak sense, have a look at how sharp that beak is, folks. That beak is not designed for seeds or fruits. It is designed for ripping meat and flesh. Also, if you look around the head, notice there's hardly any feathers on the head. That's because these animals stick their entire face and neck deep into the carcass of an animal, and they get covered in blood and they get very dirty. And if those head was covered in feathers, it would really lead to quite unhygienic and unsanitary conditions. And most of you probably think these are disgusting, dirty birds, but they're probably about as clean as you get, because they will bask in the sun and they will regularly bathe. So it's another reason why you might find a whole host of whiteback vultures in a tree. Just think about where you are. You're probably quite near to a little pan where the animals have been bathing and cleaning themselves the night before. They then just spend the evening. We have a lilac-breasted roller calling in the tree there. Anna-Marie, my favorite raptor, it is a difficult decision. Really, really difficult decision, because I enjoy martial eagle. They're quite a large bird, beautiful little crest on the back of their head. But what is not to like about all the raptors? The small ones, the large ones, they all are quite special. The black with the Verreaux's eagle, the Verreaux's eagle owl, the giant eagle owl. It is a difficult question. Raptors, I think, are just all adapted and beautiful and amazing in their way they do things. So it's a very hard question. Very, very hard question. I like them all. I like them all. But maybe if I'd had to give it a name, Martial Eagle will probably sit up there on the list. But then the peregrine falcon. See, I can just keep going. I can keep going with raptors in my head. So it's a very hard question to ask. But while we leave this vulture to observe over the landscape, looking for its quarry, looking for potential meat for the morning, we're going to continue on, see if we can pick up on any other activity, locate some tracks, maybe find you something spotted and furry. Question from Julia: do vultures ever feed on live prey? Whiteback vultures, no. I mean, you will find them feeding on some termites, alates, when they come out of the ground, but that's been one of the biggest issues in the past. Is a lot of people think that vultures come down and kill their baby lambs, they kill their small animals, whatever animals they might have on the property, and they've been persecuted for a very, very long time. I do think there has been records of lappet-faced vultures killing live prey, but I've never seen anything like that before. They are primarily a scavenger. That is their role in the ecosystem. We're going to go left here, Senzi. Okay. So folks, there was reports of Tingana a little bit further up this way back towards camp, towards quarantine. The station that located didn't stay with him. He was on the move. So it would be quite nice to see if we can find him. He was on the move and he was calling and he was doing his thing. So we're going to see if we can find him. I am looking quite closely at the map that I've been given now. So while we are in search of him, we're going to be linking you back to Tristan, who I think has something, once again, furry, cuddly, or maybe not so cuddly, but let's see what he has for you.
Well, I would imagine they are cuddly. Whether or not you would want to cuddle them is probably at your own peril, because the lionesses lying behind would be not very happy if you started to cuddle them. And I'd imagine actually even these little small, even though they're quite small for lions, would still be a handful if they've never had a human touch. I think they would be quite sore if you got clawed by them or bitten by them. Those paws are big already, and well, they've got quite sharp little teeth, but they are looking very cute, those two. I think they're a little bit on the cold side, so they're kind of cuddled up together, and then everybody else is just sprawled away on either side of them. Now, I don't see the four little ones at the moment. Apparently they were around with Steve yesterday, but just over here in this little bush right there is where there are a few more, and so I was thinking that the four little ones were curled up inside there with the rest, but they don't seem to be. It seems to be the middle sort of grouping of cubs. So while there are three, I think, inside there might be four inside there. Those would be the sort of middle ones, and then you've got the bigger ones on my right hand side, which are the sub-adults for that particular grouping. Now, the one lioness does seem to have quite a nice quite a big wound on her right leg. Not that it would be nice, but you can just see there's an open gash, so when she breathes every now and then you just see it kind of coming out from behind that. Now, while that looks as though it would be very painful for all of us, and I'm sure it is painful for her, that is just a superficial kind of wound. If you compare that to the likes of the Nkahuma female, who had that massive gash on her hip and she's managed to survive, that will be something that will close up fairly shortly. But I'm interested to know what would have caused that. That's something that looks almost like a hunting injury. I suppose, with these cats, injuries like that are fairly common. They unfortunately spend a vast majority of their time going after big prey animals, and so they sometimes get dragged through bushes and hit stumps, and there's all kinds of things that can happen, as well as the fact that a lot of these animals, even things like zebra, are able to kick and they sometimes then lash out and catch one of these lionesses like that, and so that's when you get small wounds like the one that you saw there. It doesn't look like a bite mark. Generally when you get bites, you'll find little holes around that wound. So, Donna, I suppose snoring to a degree, I mean, they tend to be, normally when they're sleeping, either they like this where they're quite quiet if it's cool, but if it gets very hot, then you hear them panting more than anything else. But I have heard a male lion kind of making some snoring noises from time to time. In fact, not one, I've heard quite a few of them. And twitching, most certainly. So they do twitch a lot when they sleep. You'll find both them and leopards, when they're lying down and sleeping, their paws twitch a lot and their ears twitch a lot, and even their coat to a degree. Now, some of that will be a response to the flies that they have landing on them, so sometimes around the ears and the faces. There's a lot of flies out here that will land to try and get moisture off of these animals, and so you'll find they twitch for that. But other times it's just because they're almost in a dreamlike state, and that's when you'll see the kind of paws moving as though they're running and those kind of things. So they do twitch quite a lot. Snoring, not so much. They're not as noisy as some domestic cats that I've seen. Some domestic cats seem to just go crazy, and I think some of it is also due to the fact that a lot of domestic animals, unfortunately, have been bred the way that they are, and a lot of them have issues with their sort of breathing ways. If you think of something like a bulldog and some of the species of cats, is that their faces are quite squashed up, and then breathing becomes a little harder, and that's sometimes when snoring starts to occur, or loud breathing, should we call it. And with the lions, obviously, that's not the case. They've got quite still an elongated muzzle. They haven't quite gone through all of that, and so they don't have to worry. Now you can see they're just starting to lift their heads a little bit. I don't know if maybe something was moving around that stirred them. The little cub also started to look around. Maybe it's noticed that some of the other siblings are here and is just staring into the bush and just checking who's around. But they definitely are, at least one or two of them, starting to wake up. The adult females, though, are completely fast asleep. You can see that female's gone back to sleep there. And so as long as the adult females are down and not moving, we're not going to see too much from the pride itself. The cubs are not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay with their moms in the hope that moms provide food at some point soon. So I think at this stage it's still going to be a fairly sedate start to the morning. It's also, I suppose, the grass is all wet, and maybe that's what they're waiting for, is a little bit more sort of warmth to come out, dry the grass a bit, and then they can start moving around. But they do look a little bit sorry for themselves, don't they? Shame, guys. Is it cold and wet this morning? At least they didn't get dragged too far, but they don't look happy, do they? Francis, you're asking why these lions look so hungry yet they're not attacking us humans. Well, there's a very simple reason for that, is because as adult lions, they're not teaching these cubs that we're food, and then when cubs become adults, they don't recognize us as a food source. Also, we're a big object that's quite noisy, and so, the lions, when they first see us as little cubs, are probably a little bit scared, and then they learn from their parents is that we don't hurt them, we don't take food away from them, and because we have a slightly different smell in the form of petrol and those kind of things, and we have a clunky sound as we drive along, they just don't associate us with any type of food item whatsoever. Also, in the real world and in places like this, while lions are incredibly dangerous, you'll find that they don't see humans as a prey source that they can just go after every now and then. A lot of the fatalities when it comes to human and lion conflict and those kind of things is generally because lions are either being attacked by people, or you have a situation where lions have been surprised, and so they're either on a carcass or they've got cubs and they don't have anywhere else to go, and so they're just trying to defend themselves, and that's when they'll then lash out at people. But generally they're actually quite nervous of people and move away. But because we spend so much time here in the vehicles from when they're a small age, like these cubs, they learn that we're not a threat nor a food item because the adults don't hunt us, and so that's why we're able to sit close to them and they don't worry about us at all, which is quite nice. It certainly makes things a lot more comfortable. Right, now, so far this morning, you have seen myself and Steve. Unfortunately, the Mara team is experiencing a few technical glitches, and they've got a massive rainstorm, I believe, and Taylor's been flooded and all kinds of things. So hopefully the team dries out and everything goes well. But let's go back across to Steve, who I believe has got a nocturnal creature that has dug out some earth and should be very interesting.
And you're back with me, folks, and we've come along the road here. We found ourselves a lovely termite mound. You can see it in the picture. Beautiful, beautiful big termite mound of the Macrotermes termite. You can tell this by the fact that the shape of the structure is really, really large. Macrotermes, these termites are responsible for growing fungus inside of their dome here, which they then feed material similar to this, but it would be probably more broken down than that, or dry and cellulose-like. They bring this into the fungus, they put it on the fungus breaks it down, and they eat the available sugar that provides. But that's not the reason I stopped, folks. We started this morning with a little chat about aardvark, and as we go along in this environment, you often don't see them, but what you do see is wonderful activity and tracks on the side of termite mounds. I wonder if you can get right in on here. But what's characteristic about this is the shape of this. It's quite a large keyhole, but quite a large shape. And if you can't really see it too clearly from there, but you can clearly see the nail marks that are produced by the aardvark. Big animal that will dig through the back of its legs like this. Quite an interesting shot, but it ends up with a pile of dirt just here between the back legs. The two back feet would sit just over here. You can see that in the picture, and clearly visible over here, if you can see it, sense, in the sand is the mark of its long tail. Okay, so the body would be from about here to about there. So we're looking at just over a meter, probably 1.2 meters of this animal. And it is in search of the Macrotermes. It was digging in here when the soil is nice and soft, and slowly over time these holes get bigger and bigger. It doesn't seem as if it got any termites in this exploration, but these are the holes and the activities that they do that then lead to massive communities of species living within the ecosystem. Well, that's it for the termites for now. We're going to jump back on the vehicle and keep going. We would love to find Tingana this morning. Let's have a look. Interesting about the termite mounds, the large ones like this, and the reason they get so big in places like the Sabi sands is if you ever talk about bricks or sand or bricks, the bigger your bricks, the larger something's going to be. And the particles out here are very sandy, so it tends to lead to larger termite mounds. You go to different areas where the soil is different, same species, the termite mound will be smaller. Who has something going on there? Let's see what he's got.
Well, we have a African harrier hawk or a gymnogene that just came over and was being mobbed. Poor Viam's trying to keep up with it, but you can see it's flying off quite quickly, and it's holding its feet, sorry, there's the antenna, I do apologize about that, but it's holding its feet quite far forward, so we thought for a second we had something in its talons, but unfortunately it's moved much faster than what we thought it would and has disappeared beyond our sight. Now, unfortunately our cubs are still fast asleep, lions are still fast asleep, so what I think we're going to do is probably leave these guys now for a little bit. We're going to go and just explore and go and see what else is around, see if we can carry on with this Tingana story and see if we can maybe try and find him. And so we'll come back to the Styx a little bit later if we don't have any luck. But I think while they're still resting and still so fast asleep, it'd be good just to go and have a little explore around and just see what else we can find. So that's the idea. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. Sorry, little one, did I wake you? There's one of them that's just looking at me as if to say, I'm so sleepy. How cute is that? So you can see how socially bonded these animals are, and why they, maintain these prides is that they are often lying like this with each other and kind of right up next to each other, and that will all be part of this bonding process, even though they could sleep apart, and there could be a situation where they would lie away from one another. When they can try and cuddle up like that, it just helps not only with warmth but also just to get everything sorted. Right, let's carry on though and see what else. The lionesses are still all very sleepy, so we're going to leave them to themselves. There's definitely no small cubs here, so I don't know where they are. Maybe they're somewhere underneath one of these bushes. How many are in there? 3. So there's 3 on that side. Hey, little ones. Alrighty, there we go. So we're through without causing too much of a disturbance, which is good news. We didn't really want to wake the whole pride up. But the adult females look as though they couldn't care less that I've just moved through. They've kind of just popped their head up briefly and then decided to put them down again. Right. Liam, where do you think we're going to find Tingana? Liam reckons that maybe Vuyatela access area. Apparently he was last seen around quarantine, so I mean from there he could go really any direction. Normally though he kind of heads up towards Gallagher shortcut, that area, so maybe we'll go and have a little look around there. You never know with Tingana though, he walks so far. Now that his limp is all but gone, he's really able to go a long way again, and so difficult to find him sometimes, and particularly with this substrate that we're having to deal with at the moment, the lack of sort of soft soil and the fact that it's rained has made it quite tough. Now you might be wondering why I'm off-roading, and well, that's because the elephants have done some damage on my left hand side. They've decided that this road should be closed, and so there's a massive fallen over marula that is broken off. Now whether this was Ellie's or it was a storm, I'm not quite sure, because that is a seriously big tree in comparison to the size of even us. So if we go a little bit closer, you'll get a kind of comparison with the vehicle. You can see that it's probably, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 times the length of the car and very round. But what you will notice as well is if you look at the sort of base end of this tree, you'll notice that there's a lot of bark missing, and therefore it's allowed a lot of insects to get inside then to start boring and tunneling through there, and it's exposed it to termites and wood boring beetles, and I think that's rotted that wood away. And so either an elephant's come along and pushed it and it's broken, or in these storms that we've had, there's been a massive amount of water which has weighed the top half of the tree down, and then with the wind and those kind of things, so it then breaks and falls over like this. But it's a shame, because it was a beautiful marula tree that is now going to be dead, and it looks like there was a perfect little nest in it. So if you look on this little section there's a little kink in the marula tree and a perfect hole. So I think there might have been a nest there for either a woodpecker or a barbet. They'll use those. Sometimes you'll even see woodland kingfisher using them, and you can actually see there's a little bit of white there as well, so maybe there's a little bit of dung from a bird. In fact, there's a little bit of dung from where a bird has been sitting. So somebody's nest, unfortunately, has also ended up plummeting to the ground, and that's not good at all, because that's not going to expose that poor nest to snakes and all kinds of other things that might be out here. Oh well, it's going to be a big cleanup job as well. Book lover, I haven't seen any golden orb webs around just yet personally, but I think Steph saw some in December, if I'm not mistaken, or Scott, one of the two of them. They saw 1 or 2 that were around, but none of the really big ones just yet. You know, start to see them more around sort of February, March. They kind of grow through the summer period, and then you start to really notice them in those times. But I would imagine after a bit of rain like we've had now, and you know, hopefully the insect life is going to increase dramatically, because it's been fairly quiet insect wise over the last little bit, and so I'm hoping, you know, we'll start to see more, and that will then, you know, show the spiders a lot more as they come out and they feed and they start to grow. Hopefully they're going to get bigger and stronger and will be more visible. But so far I personally haven't seen any nice size orb webs yet. I haven't even seen the constructs of their webs yet, but I know that Scott or Steph, one of the two, managed to see some the other day, so hopefully they will be around. They are beautiful spiders. I know a lot of you might think I'm absolutely mad because I say that they're beautiful, but they are. They're incredibly rich in colors, and they're amazing animals, and the way that they build these webs is absolutely amazing, and the strength that the web has and the size, and also just the color of those golden strands in the golden orb web spider is absolutely beautiful. So I quite like them, and I think they're in a nice part of the bush. But if you are an arachnophobe, don't ever come on safari in February, March, because, well, you'll probably, commit some sort of horrible, heinous act to yourself out of sheer fear and desperation. I remember I had a lady once when we were following Shadow, and we were following her, and this lady was absolutely petrified of spiders, but unfortunately for her, she had booked at the worst time. We had hundreds of orb web spiders at that stage, and they were literally everywhere, and you could not go off-road without driving into the web of an orb web spider. And so anyway, we're following Shadow along, and she's a bit petrified, and I said to her, don't worry, these spiders won't do anything to you. You know, they're completely harmless, and if they are around, just don't worry about them and let them just kind of, you know, go, and everything will be fine. Anyway, we were right next to Shadow at one point, and she's coming quite close to the vehicle, and all of a sudden this spider, we hit a web and the spider drops in onto this lady, and this lady just has an absolute panic attack. Spider goes flying that way, lady jumps out onto right next to Shadow. Shadow starts running off. My tracker is completely bewildered by what's going on, as is everybody else in the vehicle, and we had to then grab this lady before she kind of landed on top of Shadow, and then try and pull her back into the car before anything went too awry. But it was quite, later in hindsight, was hysterically funny. It must have been very funny from the other vehicles perspective that was in the sighting, as this lady went just charging off the car, and spiders and bits of belongings were being thrown in all directions at that point. So there are people that are completely petrified of them, and shame. She was quite scarred by that experience, and she decided that a leopard would be a better option than this small harmless golden orb-web spider that had landed on her lap and caused her to have a mild heart attack, I would imagine. In fact, actually, I've had some quite interesting panic attack situations, really. That one was one that was quite funny, and then I had one that wasn't so funny, actually, where we were also following the legend Mfufunyan, and he was kind of walking along, and he came from a sort of drainage section, and so I was going towards the drainage, and he then changed direction, and I was trying to back up again against the drainage side of things, and as I was kind of going back, this woman just shouted at me that I was about to kill her, and she was this blood-curdling scream, and how can I drive so close to not only a dangerous cat but also to a depth, well, this deep sort of drainage section where the bank could collapse, and that, you know, there's elephants around. And she then went into this massive panic attack where she literally stopped breathing for a while, and we had to kind of first aid her and try and kind of resuscitate her back, and then we decided that that would be her last safari for her trip, and that she should probably not go out any longer, because she will just unfortunately probably keel over and won't live any longer if she had to come across half the things we came across. So that was quite a scary one, and wasn't very, very nice at all, and a number of the other guests were quite shocked by all of this. Now, I believe a lot of you are saying that you would have chosen Shadow over the spider as well. I'm not so sure. Shadow's response was one of sheer shock, and she was much like the spider in that she just wanted to get out of there as quick as possible. And like I said, the poor spider though got flung about 400 meters. I'm sure that poor spider has never flown so far in all of its life, and it was probably just as surprised as anybody. And like I say, Shadow has just thought this must have been the weirdest thing, and kind of tried to run away as quick as possible. In fact, actually, we lost her after that. We weren't able to find her again. She then got such a fright that she decided she's not going to go anywhere near where we were. But it was that sighting in particular was hysterically funny. Jared's buddy, you say no wonder Shadow is such a grumpy cat. Well, I know, shame. She got frightened that day, but shame. She's not a bad cat, and she's certainly not the grumpiest that there ever has been, and she probably won't be the grumpiest that will ever have lived either. I find her, while she is a little bit tough to deal with at times. Sorry, there was a little cinnamon-breasted bunting that was bouncing around there that I wanted to show you, but it disappeared. While she can be a handful at times, I actually find Shadow lately has been quite wonderful. I mean, she's been very relaxed with us and has really not given us a iota of nonsense. Right, well, I'm going to go and see what else I can find and just kind of meander and try pick up some tracks for Tingana. And while I do that, let's go across to Steve, who seems to be continuing his feathered friend morning and has found himself with a beautiful specimen to show you.
Welcome back, and indeed a beautiful specimen it is. Pale morph Wahlberg's eagle, from the large raptors to the small. Wahlberg's eagle is in fact the smallest eagle species that we find in South Africa, and it is a migratory species, which means it comes from northern Africa all the way down here to feed and to breed. And what is quite interesting about the Wahlberg's eagle, I find quite interesting, is the fact that it breeds here in our summer months. Most of the eagle species we find in the savannah come and breed in the winter months. Now, it is quite an interesting topic, an interesting debate, but why would you breed in the summer when others are not breeding, eagle-wise, and that's purely because of competition. They are having to feed their chicks, and they are competing with all of the smaller raptors, and they are quite a versatile feeder. They feed on insects and small rodents, all sorts of lizards and skinks and snakes, anything small that they might be able to get. But then why do the other raptors nest in the winter? Very, very interesting question, but it all boils down to the fact that, as I say the word boil, it is very hot here in the summer months, and most of the eagles will nest on the top of the tallest acacia tree, which enables them to obviously keep their chicks away from predators, away from harm's reach. Whereas there is the Wahlberg's eagle nest, and if you have a look at it, it's a good 3-4 meters into the canopy. So it's quite deep in the canopy, and in the summer there's lots of leaves on the tree. So not a lot of leaves on this tree, but it's one of the characteristic features of a Wahlberg's nest is it's quite low down in the canopy, generally a meter or two below the top of the canopy, and that allows for a bit of shade for the eggs. Can you imagine very, very hot temperatures in the summer here, 70, 80, 90 degrees Fahrenheit? These birds, the eggs would just cook in the top of the nest, and the chicks themselves would cook. But it is the risk that the Wahlbergs take, and being a smaller raptor, a smaller eagle, they're able to access and get into the lower reaches of a thorny shrub, whereas your large raptors, your vultures, your tawny eagles, martial eagles, for example, have to nest right up on top, and it's quite cumbersome for a large bird to get in and out of a nest like that. And then we can see the Wahlbergs there in the shot. He's looking quite wet and quite damp. I'm sure he's waiting for that morning sun to come out and bask and dry him or her. It's hard to say. Nice pale colours to the chest and head, and a very sharp raptor beak. Lynn, you love the pale form Wahlbergs, so do I. They are absolutely beautiful birds. It's always nice to see a variation in the genetics of a bird, to see the different forms and morphs. If we come on to the dashboard here, I've actually got a photo of what a Wahlbergs can look like as well. It's more of a drawing than a photo, but this is the Roberts app, and you can get a look at that, and the bird is actually white. Pale white in color. I've seen one of these before, and it is marvelous to see. Beautiful colors. But what's interesting to see and to note, that the eagles have feathers all the way down to their feet. True eagles do, and that's a nice way of characterizing a bird. If you see a raptor in the tree that you're not too sure on what it is, see if you can have a look at the legs. That will help you to classify and characterize what size or family you should put it into. All the harriers, all of the buzzards, all those other raptors that we have that do not have feathers all the way to the legs, to the feet. So it's quite an interesting thing to pay attention to, and being the smallest eagle, it is also the smallest, so it looks quite small. It looks like it could be a buzzard, it could be a snake eagle for its size. Have a look at the eye, have a look at the crest. Wahlbergs has often got this lovely little crest on the back of the head. Wonderful, wonderful. And what is happening up here on the left, the Wahlberg's eagle is actually cohabiting in a tree with the wonderful buffalo weaver nest. Red-billed buffalo weaver. We've spoken about him. I did yesterday anyway, for those of you who weren't with us. Buffalo weaver is one of the small five, and they build these very messy jumbles of a nest. And what's very easy to see today, because the sun is just on our left-hand side and behind us over our shoulder, coming up in the east, and these trees are facing in the northwesty direction. So for a geographical perspective, quite nice to use that for direction. When the sun is not shining, it's quite an easy way to navigate. Philip, you ask if the pale morph is a recessive gene, and it is. It's one of those hidden genes that come through from time to time, just like redheads in Caucasian families come through every now and again. It's not every generation, but it is a genetic trait that if two pale morphs breed, then quite often they might have a pale morph baby. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that, if that is always the case. But it is not a very strong gene, but we do see it more often in Wahlbergs than we do in a lot of the other raptors. Tawny eagles I've also seen to be pale morph, but then you also get dark morphs. In the case of your goshawks, you can often get a black goshawks. Gabar goshawk can be black as opposed to being quite grey, and it's quite nice to see that melanistic coloration in a bird. It's just genetics. It's just the way that it's moved down the generation. Whether it benefits them or not, difficult to say, but it's nice for some variety. So as that Wahlbergs just views the surroundings, it is paying attention to any movement in the long grass. We saw the fork-tailed drongos earlier hawking. A lot of predatory birds will sit on a perch like this and wait to see any movement down there, a rodent, a snake, anything that might be moving, and then they can swoop down. We've got quite a nice field of vision over here, and eagles have got, I reckon they say 20 odd times better vision than we do. So after Senzo spotted that warthog this morning with his amazing eyesight, you can imagine a bird with 20 something times our vision will be able to see something moving. Okay, well, we're going to continue on. We're still in the search of something big and hairy. Let's see if we can come right this morning. I'm going to link you back to Tristan, and we'll see you back shortly.
Well, I hope you do find something big and hairy and scary and all things wonderful. We've got something small and fluffy that is not very scary at all, and that is the form of a redback shrike. Well, actually not scary for us, but if you are an insect, you would be very petrified of that bird, because it is an incredibly good predator and it is able to go after all kinds of insects. And so if you are a butterfly or a little small flying insect like a winged owlet, you would be petrified of that. And while it looks fluffy and cute to us, those probably look like sort of death from above, I would imagine, for an insect. Like a dragon, yes, with that red back and that stripe on the eye. I think they would be very scary if you are a winged owlet. What would something like a falcon be, an Amo falcon, if that's a dragon to an owlet? What do you think? Just a bigger dragon. Talking of bigger dragons, there's also a bird that's just flown away from us that I think is going to land in that tree. Let's just try to go forward a little bit. And we're just going to try and see quickly if we get a gap here. We might just very well be able to see this bird. What about... oh, that would have been nice there. Let's see... what do you think, Vildi? Alright, there, you might be able to get it. There we go. So that was sitting in the tree, and so that's a bigger dragon apparently. Now, what it is, I'm not 100% certain at this stage. It looks very much like one of our brown eagles, so, you know, tawny, lesser spotted. It's not a steppe eagle. It's definitely not one of those. Is it a Wahlbergs? No, could be lesser spotted actually. Difficult to say, as it's very far away at the moment, and so I'm just trying to see it. It does have a Wahlbergs-like face, so quite a smallish beak in comparison to the head. It's not one of our brown snake eagles. That would have a very different eye to this one. This one has got a dark colored eye, so it's either a Wahlbergs or a lesser spotted. Now, I'm just trying to see. Can we see the eye, or is it a dark eye, Wiem? Or is it a lightish colored eye? Can't really see. Because the lesser spotted eagles, they have a sort of caramel colored eye that if you can pick up the eye color. So I'm going to go with the Wahlbergs eagle. That is what I'm going to go with, given that it has that right yellow little sear. It looks like a dark eye from where I am, and they seem to be sort of the right shape, although the crest isn't coming up, but it could be that that's just because of the wind. So James, you also are in agreement that this is a Wahlbergs eagle. Wonderful. That is always good news to see. And so that is the darker morph of the one that Steve was maybe looking at. I think Steve was looking at a pale morph, given that we were talking about pale morph Wahlbergs, and always nice to see them. And if you are a winged owlet, then, well, that must be the biggest dragon out here, because these guys do feed off them as well. So it'd be a tough time if you're a winged owlet. You've got lots of things that are death from above. Luckily none of them breathe fire though. James, this is an interesting question. You're wondering which birds I think have the most complex mating ritual. Whew. I'm not sure, to be honest. Hold on, sorry. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I would have to really probably think about this for quite some time and go through a lot of them. And some of the mating rituals I'm honestly not familiar with at all in some of these birds. So I don't know actually what my answer to that would be. I would like to see more birds mating rituals, and we don't have a lot of the really kind of fancy rituals that some of the other birds in forested areas and places like that do. But I just saw a track. Sorry, I was a bit distracted also there because I've just seen a track and it looks like potentially for the Styx Pride. I would just want to double check it quickly, but I mean I'm just trying to think of the ones that I know as to what I would say, but no, definitely the Styx Pride. So this must be from last night when they came in, so we'll leave those and not worry about them too much. They head off down there, and it must be the exact same lines that we found. So I'm not sure, James. Let me think about it, and I'll try and get back to you. I really can't kind of think, and nothing comes to my mind of extravagant displays just yet. So I would like to kind of think about it a little bit more. I mean, there's obviously birds that occur outside of this area that have amazing displays, but here in South Africa, or in this particular section, I can't really think of anything that is really absolutely amazing to watch. I suppose the red-crested Quran would be a very, very cool one. I mean, they go up into the air and they've got this, you know, this suicidal dive that comes down, and they have that big red crest, and so they're pretty epic in terms of displaying to a female. Woodland kingfisher, yeah, they've got their little Batman pose that they have with their wings out and their lots of noise and bright colors. I suppose the red-crested Quran for me would actually probably be the one that I would think of more than anything else. I was just watching that impala that was looking around. No, impala doesn't seem to be too worried. Right, well, I'm going to think about it a little bit more and think about what other birds that we have out here and their displays that they have. And while I do that, let's go back across to Steve, who I think is meandering his way slowly up via tele access, and I wonder where he's off to.
You're back with me, folks, and certainly we have just come off tele access from the dam. There are some impalas milling around there. No sign of a furry cat as we speak, but we are keeping our eyes open. There were tracks, or the animal Tingana was last seen heading in this sort of direction, so it's important to keep our nose to the ground and see if we can pick up on any tracks. All I can see at the moment is lots of hyena tracks. Hyenas are all over the place in this reserve. They come in and out of our camp, and they actually broke a dish in our camp last night. Not sure if the dish was dirty, but it is now officially broken. So when I was a waiter in the restaurant, we used to pay 10 Rand a shift for what we call breakages, but I don't think the hyena has been or will be charged for such damage. Stories in the sand, folks. Stories in the sand. Lots to interpret. Question from Cape Turtle Dove is, how long have I been guiding for? I started guiding in 2006, and then I worked for Singita as a conservation officer and guide, and slowly but surely I continued studying. So it's hard to say the amount of years now off the top of my head, but I've been in the bush since 2006, working for Singita in the Kruger National Park and some stints in the Sabi Sands, and then I also then worked for wilderness safaris up in the northern Kruger. Folks, here we have wonderful striped pajamas. There he is. Now immediately I can tell you that's the stallion, the male, purely because he is keeping himself between us and his harem of females. He's also slightly bigger than the females, quite difficult to see from a distance, but the behavior of a male is always to put himself between the danger and his ladies. They look like they stand out so well, don't they, to our color vision, our depth perception. But that black and white is actually a very good camouflage, a form of distraction display. Oh, being irritated by the flies, it seems. The zebra, and the tail is constantly wagging to keep the flies away from the private bits. And just like the common horse, zebras are grazers. Let's see if we can move up a bit, get another visual of these. Please send your questions through about zebra if you have any. It's nice to see them, and the area we're in now, quarantine, is quite nice and open, so lots of grass. Zebras rely on a huge amount of grass to feed every single day. We spoke earlier about the ruminants and how the ruminants will feed their bellies full and then go sit down and ruminate. In the case of a zebra, they are non-ruminants. Now, if you're not sure what a non-ruminant is, it basically means an animal that does what we call hindgut fermentation. They ingest a huge amount of food. They have a simple stomach and then an enlarged cecum, where all of the decomposition or bacteria fermentation takes place. And that's why when you spook a zebra and it runs away, they generally let off quite a raucous amount of farting as they run. And they are known as the flatulators of the bush. And there we have a youngster. Youngster doesn't quite seem to know what it's doing and has its face in the bushes feeding on leaves or attempting to. Zebras are primarily grazers, but they will have a small quantity of leaf material in their diet. Because we call animals grazers or browsers does not mean that they are 100% exclusive. It all depends on the area and what plants you find there. But have a look at the tail wagging. Those stripes are unique to each individual. That little baby's head just popping around the back there. You notice the baby's not feeding because it's relying on mother's milk. But the zebras, their heads are down and they are feeding practically the entire day. Huge amounts of food needs to go in. Huge amounts of nutrients required. Because they have quite a simple digestive system, the zebras actually require less nutrients in general than your non-ruminants, or than your ruminants like buffalo, but they have to take in twice as much to get a similar sort of quantity through. So they can survive quite well off very poor vegetation because they're just double dose. We have the oxpecker doing its crucial role of cleaning parasites around the bum area. Oh, there we have the youngster trying to suckle. And if you look quite closely, you can see that the baby's legs are similar in length and the belly height is very similar in height to the mother. So the stripes, Joy asks what are the purpose of the shadow stripes. I don't actually know, Joy. Zebras have stripes, and why the Birchall's or plain zebra has shadow stripes versus the others further north that are only black and white, I don't know. It might have to do something to do with the environment, with the temperatures we get down here. I know for a fact that these zebras can stand out in the middle of the sun all day. They don't seem to be very perturbed by the heat. Some people say that there's different fat cells. Oh, there we go. Baby's having a little bit of a suckle, and mum doing some important cleaning work on the rear end. So the stripes work as primarily as camouflage, but then also as a heat cooling agent. Some people reckon, and there's some published work out there, that there's different fat particles underneath the different stripes, and that insulates or gives off more heat than the other, causing a convection current across the fur. Other people believe that the black attracts the heat and the white repels it, causing a similar convection current. I know there was a study done years ago on an electrified horse-like animal, that they had one black, one white, and one was striped. And they pulled it through the savannah at exactly the same time of day, same conditions, everything was or the body of this mannequin zebra was electrocuted and landed on the tray that was underneath the zebra, and then they counted, and they reckon the white animal received the most bites, the black one the second, and the striped one had the fewest bites. So, these are all hypotheses. Why do they have the stripes? You know, a lot of these things are true. A lot of these things do work, but we all have to think about it ourselves and judge for ourselves what we reckon. But there we've got the zebra feeding, and just coming in on the left here, can you see? Got a couple of wildebeest. We've got some impala. So a nice mixed feeding group here. Liz, a question about the mohawk mane on a zebra. I don't know why zebras have manes. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason, but I know one thing for sure, that the condition of a zebra can be told by the condition of the mane. If the mane is standing up straight, it's in good condition. If it's flopping a bit, that's the area where the zebra loses condition, and you can actually see visibly by the condition of the mane if that animal is in good condition. You look at most other animals, antelope for example, and they start losing condition around the rump, around the rib area. You can see the hip start sticking out. Zebras always seem to maintain a very fat and rotund appearance. A lot of that's to do with the gas that they have inside of them, that enlarged cecum cavity they have in the lower intestine, which allows them to break down a lot of microbes, break down a lot of the vegetation, a lot of fermentation. Do you see that? We just had an alarm call from a Franklin, and all the animals bolted. So what you see here is a mixed feeding flock. We've got youngsters with their parents, the wildebeest, the zebra with their babies, and the impala with their babies. And what's very, very nice to see, if you just pan out a little bit, Sense, try and get like a broad picture of all of them. Have a look how many animals have their head down. A huge amount have their head down, which enables them to feed. When you're in a group of this size, there's always 1 or 2, 3 or 4 individuals looking in any direction at one time. And because we're in a relatively open area, danger can be spotted from quite a distance. So these animals are helping each other. It's a mutualistic relationship where they are not competing directly for the food, but they are assisting each other in safety and in defending each other. So it is all selfish. They're all doing it for individual needs. But we're going to stay with these animals a bit longer. We might move off, but I believe Tristan has something very exciting for you that side.
I do indeed. We've come down towards Thandi's den, and there, camouflaged right on top, is the beautiful Thandi just looking out. Now the little cub was out for a few seconds. It ran back towards those stumps. There it is. Look, it's on top of the tree, Wildy. So it's there on top of the tree. It's just its little ears poking out. Look at how cute it is. Hey, little one. They're such a cute little thing, Liz. I can't get enough of it, and it seems as though it's been absolutely spoiling everybody with some amazing sightings. So it is around. It will move around quite a bit. I'm pretty sure it's going to go back up towards where Thandi is. We parked nice and far away just to give her some nice space. See, she's calling. She's telling the cub everything's okay. Come on. There we go. Just little soft calls. Let's see if the little one, there it goes. It's going up the bank. There we go. Hey, little one. How cute is that? And it's just trying to negotiate. And you see that stalking technique? Look at it bounce around. That is as cute as it gets. How cool is that? There we go, little one. You can see the sort of instinct in it already, where it's biting, chewing and grabbing, and in Thandi I think I have a little playing session with it. How awesome is this? We are going to get so spoiled. Now, hopefully she'll roll back towards our side, and then I don't want to move too much because I don't want to give the cub a fright. And with Thandi playing, it's such a special thing to be a part of, and I know there's a few bushes in the way, and hopefully, like I say, she'll roll the opposite side or even move down towards the tree itself, and we'll be able to see them a lot better because it is so wonderful. You can see they're just moving around a bit. Let's just try and see if we move slightly forward, Vim. I think you'll get a better gap. Now, she seems as though she's okay. The little cub hopefully won't be too perturbed by us as well. How's that, Vim? Is that better? There we go. So it's, look at that, it's watching the little us and the little tail. I'm sure it's going to pounce on that tail. The leopard and lions, they love mom's tail. No, we're going to go for the shoulder and go for the back. Now Now, to me, it looks like a little female, so you can see the tail is up. And so the first time I saw it, I thought it might be a female, but it looks like it. Oh, careful you don't get squashed, little one. How cool is this? This is so special. And this is the best part about leopard cubs. The first time we saw it, it was amazing just to see such a tiny little cub. And then you get to a situation where you get to now, at this point, when they start to become playful. And this is the best sort of period to view leopard cubs. From now until the time that they reach about a year old, they become super playful. And because it's on her own, we're going to see a lot of playfulness with mom in particular. So Thandi's going to get harassed a lot by this little cub over the next few months. And that's because it doesn't have a sibling to play with. If you think of Shangila and Hosanna, they used to have lots of games, the two of them chasing each other up and down. Now that little one doesn't have that option, so it's got to try and do it all with mom. And so mom's tail, mom's ears, everything is going to be bitten and bounced on. And look at this. This is so cool. Whoopsie, where did it go? Did it go falling down the bank? It looked as though it almost went tumbling down the bank. No, there it is. How cool. This is very, very special. Now, I'm pretty sure that if we just keep coming here, and we'll start to see that this cub is going to get better and better with us. It still initially gets a little frightened and runs to the den, but when you see Thandi calling it out, that's really going to make things that much better for all of us. It's going to allow, us to be able to view her a lot more, and as the more time we can spend here, then obviously the more the little cub won't worry about us. And already it is fairly relaxed. The fact that it's out and playing with mom at this stage already is very, very cool to see. But look at the size of those paws, and you can see it biting everything. So it's on her nose, on her ears. This is very cool. Hopefully they'll just roll slightly to the right again, or into the left of where we are now, because there we go, she's up and moving now. Let's see what she does. It's typical of a leopard, is that they do play for a little bit and then they decide, no, that's it, I've had enough, I'm going to go and sit down somewhere else. And then the cub needs to kind of take that hint, and you'll find that they often don't though, and soon the cub will come bounding up again and try and jump on mom as soon as she lies down. But let's just see what happens. I'm hoping she's going to settle down right there somewhere. There we go, there it comes. How cool is this? This is very special. Just to see it running around the way that it is, and the fact that it's jumping all over mom, this is really as good as it gets, that's for sure. Now they're going to disappear behind a little embankment for now, so I just want to sit here and see, because there's the tail kind of still poking out. I don't really want to move too much just yet. I just want to see what she gets up to and whether or not she starts to come down towards the riverbed itself. The problem with where they've gone now is that I actually can't get to that section at all, so I won't be able to even go around over the top there. So if she's moving deeper off that way, then there's going to be very difficult for us to be able to go anywhere near there. Can you see anything there, Vildi? No. Let's just try and reposition onto the other bank. Maybe we can get a view from this top bank again. So cool to see though. It is, like I say, as good as it gets, that's for sure. I think we might have a bit of a tough time actually seeing her. So it just goes to show though, sometimes we come here and we think she's not here, and she could very well be. It's just that she's on the other side, or she's on a different bank or something like that, and it makes it, quite tricky to actually see her. I was thinking that she might be... I'm just trying to work out where she was. She was there and she went down this side, so let's just have a little look. They might have gone down into the riverbed itself, which will be actually quite nice because it's beautiful down there. There's nice soft sand for this little one to play in, and it'll be quite cool if they are going to play in the riverbed itself. I just want to go slowly though, because obviously we don't want to pressurize Thandi in any way whatsoever. Right, now I'm going to go and try and just check around and see if we can get another view of Thandi and this little cub. And while I do that, let's go back across to Steve and see if he's had any luck with all of those alarm calls and whether Tingana has showed.
And you're back with us, folks, and we are still traversing around. We're on a very slow bumble around the block, trying to see if we can locate any of the tracks of a potential male leopard. We had some tracks a little bit further back, but from late last night, it was, well, maybe a bit earlier than that, because there was still a bit of rain on top of them. But we've done a big loop around the block here, and we'll see. This is quite a little interesting spot. It's not very easy to see, but we spoke earlier about the termite mound, folks, and here we have another lovely termite mound. Can you see it? Another termite mound. And what's noticeable on and around the termite mound, I'm sure you've all seen some of this before. Oh, well, first of all, that is a big drop of elephant dung, and can you zoom in on there? You can see the tiny little workers of the macrotermes in action. These are very young, very new guys. You can see by the coloration, and they're very, very small. We even have a little spider in there. So this elephant dung that has been deposited, let me put that back quite nicely there. These termites are doing their job. They are turning the elephant dung back into soil, back into nutrients. But the reason why I stopped, and it's something that you quite often find out here, is a termite mound like this, and then some elephant dung in and around. And what that actually is the elephant, because they are such big animals and their lungs are situated here in the chest, huge amounts of weight on the chest, they will actually lie down on a slope like this, which assists them in the pressure on their lungs. They lie down with their head and back up and their feet down, and quite often, if the soil is in good condition and you've seen it's quite sandy and not too wet like this, you can quite often find the trunk mark and the tail mark and the feet mark of where that animal had his bed. Okay, well, that's self-plugged back in. So we've done a big loop around quarantine. The antelope aren't looking too spooked. The alarm calls we had before of a little Franklin just spooked all those impala and wildebeest, and they quickly calmed down. So we didn't notice anything there. But as we know with these leopards, they are elusive. They are camouflaged. We've got impala walking around in the clearing here. They're not looking too fussed. But the tracks hopefully will reveal themselves before too long, but we'll keep continuing around this block. Generally what you do is you traverse a block looking for tracks coming in and out. Quite often can be difficult after rain if the soil is quite hard to locate those tracks. Generally that's why most of the safari vehicles going out, you'll see an expert track on the front. I'm not a bad tracker. I wouldn't say I'm as good as the guys I used to work with back in the past, but we are keeping our eyes open, and we just located a track there, and that is quite fresh. Is on a bit of sandy soil, is mobile directly along this road here. I wouldn't even try to show you on the camera because it's not very clear. It's just a little touch in the soil surface, and considering what the update I was given earlier, can be certain it's most likely Tingana, because the track is quite large. So we're just going to keep our eyes peeled here, folks. But a male leopard walking in the road, when he's walking, he is generally scent marking, especially after rain we had last night. He'll be walking, scent marking, and what he's doing, and why they travel in the roads, it's like why we drive in the road. Driving four-wheel drive across there is difficult. It's a lot of obstacles, a lot of encumbrance, a lot of slowing us down. Cats, lions, leopards, even rhino will walk in the road, and they'll use natural boundaries like roads for their territory marking. So I remember working with trackers in the past. If they found a leopard walking in a straight line on the road, especially a male, they would refuse to follow because they just knew it would take forever. Unless we followed with a car, they would not walk it. Unless you want to walk about 10-15 Ks. Okay. I'm just going to hop off real quick, see if we can pick up anything. We've come to a bit of a junction here, see if he's gone left or see if he's gone right. Tracking. You've got to keep your eyes open. Subtle differences in the texture of the sand. not very easily seen. His tracks seem to have come off the road there, so we'll continue around a little bit on the right hand side or northern side. It's possible that he's crossed or cut across. Good morning. I'm still familiarizing myself with the territory size of these animals and these borders that they like to use. So we will keep going around the block here, seeing if we can locate anything. But as I was saying, the tracking of these cats in the road is one of the ideal situations of having territorial animals. It does make life easier if you're trying to track a cat, especially if it is territory marking. And the reason why they territory mark after rainfall is because their markings are done through scent, and they urinate and spray on the bushes. They walk in with their face and they rub their face up against the bush, and then they spray, and then that stays there for a couple weeks if there's no rain. But as soon as there's rain, that territory marking is broken off or washed off, and they have to redo it. And if they don't redo it, then they have the potential of a male coming in and trying to steal their territory from them. So folks, we're just going to send you back to Tristan, who's still scratching around. Let me do a little bit more work here myself, see if I can scratch around and find some more tracks of Tingana, and we'll come back to you in a little bit.
Well, we are still scratching around for Thandi. We can't find her just yet. We've come down to where she was last seen walking, so the little bank that she was on is just over there, and she was on top there, and then they came down into this section where we are now, and I just came round, but I can't see any sign of her. I thought I heard her 2 seconds ago contact calling for the little cub, which is what she will do if she's walking, and particularly with us driving, maybe the cub has just tried to sneak away a little bit, as they do, and so maybe she's just calling for it. So I just want to sit carefully and listen. If she is calling, it will be a very soft call that she's going to make. She doesn't want to attract too much attention, so she's not going to make a loud sort of sawing sound like they would if they're territorial. It will just be a little chuffing sound, or a little sort of soft little, almost half a call that will tell the cub that I'm here, you can come out, and everything is okay. So I thought maybe I heard her somewhere in this area here. The problem is that she just disappeared on us. She literally was right here, and she just came over the top of this lip and then has vanished. Now, she could be lying right here. There's lots of dense, thick areas that you can see that is perfect for her to just disappear in. And so I was hoping that if we stopped for a second, we would be able to just hear her or see her or just get some movement. But it seems as though she's moved on slightly. Maybe she's gone back down towards the tree itself. Thandi is a very clever leopard, and watching her with these dens has been such an interesting experience because she's really good at being able to hide in plain sight. So she keeps going to den sites and we think she's not even there. Meanwhile, she's around, and she'll just go not even 10 meters away from where you are, and she'll kind of go into a little thicket, and that'll be the end of it. But what I'm hoping is that this little cub is now starting to get to the age where it will be taken to a carcass at some point, and so it's imperative that if we do find her and she does come to a den like this and she calls, that if she starts moving away, that maybe, just maybe, she's taking the cub to food. It's possible, so it's worth just kind of looking around and checking, because at the end of the day, maybe we get lucky. And I just want to try and go forward a little bit. See. Kathy, you're wondering how old her cub is now. So, Kathy, well, difficult to say. The first time that we kind of realized she had a den was in the beginning of October. October, so it means that this cub should theoretically be about 3 months old, which is the time that it does normally get taken to food for the first time. So it is very, very possible that this little cub is going to be taken to a meal fairly soon, but it should be about 3 months old. So I'm just checking all of these little areas. I did come around from that side and I didn't see any sign of her, so I would have thought that maybe she must have used this route. I wonder if she's not gone towards those pipes like she did last time. It's very, very possible, but I don't see any sign of her here with the little one. Let's maybe just go up towards those pipes. Maybe she's gone on a little exercise mission and is going to be taken to go and explore her new sort of area. It is very possible. I just want to try and reverse back without making too much noise. The other thing is I don't really want to bash and crash and try and go through too many thickets. I want to try see if we can get things quiet as possible. Right, now I believe I'm struggling to find something, but it seems as though Steve has spotted something of interest.
Interesting indeed. Welcome back. Believe Thandi's given you... Oh, and we just lost it. That's what happens, folks. That's what happens when you have a bird. And the bird that we did just see now is a European roller. And as the name implies, it comes all the way from Europe. Very quiet bird down here. The reason it's quiet is not demarcating territory, because it's not breeding. The reason we demarcate territories is for the purpose of breeding. They just come down here to feed. Birds like that will then migrate back to breed up in the north. And the purpose of them coming down here is to feed on insects, and they are a hawker. They feed on maybe alates on the floor or insects like ants on the floor, but most of the birds they feed on will be off the wing. Birds like that, for their migration, will increase their body weight by up to 50%. Now, those of you who've enjoyed your Christmas period, if you've managed to increase your body weight by 50%, that would be quite shocking, but 50% is a huge amount of weight for them to increase on, and then they use that for fuel reserves to fly all the way back up to the north. So I need to shed a few pounds after my Christmas eating, but not too many. We're going to continue on. There hasn't been anything of Tingana crossing over to the north from where we were, but we're going to see if we can keep going around, see what will be coming around the corner, because as you know, in these environments you never know what you might find. Leopards are slippery, and their tracks, they are a very elusive cat, difficult to find. In pachyderm pictures, you ask a question about how many miles or kilometers a leopard can travel. A male leopard can cover his entire territory, and in one evening, one big boundary. And it really depends on the environment that they're in. Leopards that we find here in the Sabi sands have got far smaller territories than leopards you might find in sort of the Kalahari desert. So it is quite an open-ended question. I'm quite new to the area, and apparently there's about potentially seven leopards within this area, probably 2 or 3 males. So it's not a very huge area that these leopards are able to traverse. But when it comes to following them on foot, it can be quite tricky. So I don't know the exact answer to how many miles or kilometers, but it is quite far. And especially after rain, the males will travel that entire boundary fence or border to demarcate once again. So it can be a few kilometers easily 3-4 kilometers, 5 kilometers easily. And especially when the air is cool, the night is fresh, there's lots of moisture around off the vegetation,